Welcome to BizSimplified. Right off the bat, we're bypassing all those surface-level metrics you see floating around and diving straight into the actual academic realities of how a business truly measures success. You know, we constantly hear about these massive revenue numbers and explosive growth from companies that look absolutely unstoppable on paper. But in this explainer, we're going to pop the hood. We're looking at the underlying microeconomic engine that actually determines whether a company thrives or just totally collapses under its own weight.
So let's just get right into this massive question. Why do profitable-looking companies still fail? Well, the ultimate goal of any firm, its absolute core academic purpose, is to maximize profit, right? They do this by taking factors of production, things like land, labor, and capital, and transforming them into goods and services that consumers actually want to buy. But here's the catch. The numbers you see on a standard balance sheet, they might be a complete illusion. You can literally be generating millions in revenue and still be structurally failing. To really grasp why that happens, we have to look at the very foundation of how a firm operates. Because before a firm can generate even a single dollar of revenue, it has to organize all those factors of production. And production isn't just, making things. It's this incredibly intricate process of coordination. Whether you're running a massive logistics hub or a slick high-tech manufacturing plant, acquiring and organizing your land, labor, and capital kicks off a really complex web of costs. And here's the crucial part. Not all of these costs are obvious. In fact, the ones that usually sink a business, they're the ones you can't easily see.
Okay, so a firm's total costs actually break down into two distinct categories. On one side, we've got explicit costs. These are your straightforward input costs that require a direct out-of-pocket payment. You write a check for rent, you pay your suppliers, you cover your employees' wages. Pretty simple, right? But on the flip side, we have implicit costs. Now, these are the hidden opportunity costs that don't require you to hand over cash. For example, if you walk away from a really lucrative corporate salary to start your own venture, well, that foregone salary is a massive implicit cost. You aren't writing a check for it, sure, but it is a very real economic sacrifice.
And honestly, this distinction creates a huge divide in how we view success. Accountants, they calculate profit by only subtracting those explicit, out-of-pocket costs from your total revenue. And hey, that usually looks fantastic on paper. But economists take a much harsher and, honestly, far more accurate view. Economists subtract both the explicit and the implicit costs from revenue. This reveals your economic profit, which is almost always smaller than your accounting profit. So here is the absolute game changer. If your revenue covers your explicit costs, but fails to cover those implicit opportunity costs, you might have an accounting profit, but economically speaking, you're actually operating at a loss. To really see how these hidden costs sneak up on you, we've got to look at how a company scales. And first, we have to define our operating environment, starting with what we call the short run. Now, in economics, the short run isn't a specific chunk of time, like a month or a year. Instead, it's a production period where a firm is constrained because at least one of its inputs is fixed. Imagine you own a bakery. In the short run, you can always buy more flour, you can hire more bakers, but you're totally stuck with the physical square footage of your kitchen and the 2 ovens you already own. You are firmly constrained.
Conversely, we have the long run, which represents total flexibility. This is the period where a firm can change absolutely everything. In the long run, you can break your lease, build a brand new, massively expanded facility, and just revolutionize your entire production technique. All inputs become variable, but let's be real about business. Day-to-day operational scaling almost always happens within the tight constraints of the short run. And that, my friends, is exactly where companies get into some serious trouble.
So let's ground this with a practical example and see how it all plays out. We're going to look at an analytical case study of a tech manufacturing plant based in Japan. Now, this facility is currently operating in the short run. They've got a brilliant product, but they're constrained by a limited, fixed amount of specialized assembly equipment. The only variable input they can actually change right now is their labor. They can hire more workers. Let's see exactly what happens to their production as they start staffing up.
All right, if we track this firm's hiring from 1 all the way up to 9 workers to operate that fixed equipment, we can obviously track their total output. But far more importantly, we can calculate what's known as the marginal product. Marginal product is the exact amount of additional incremental output each brand new worker brings to the table. So when they hire their first worker, total output is 4, which means the marginal product is 4. By the time they hit 4 workers, they're producing 23 units, and that 4th worker's marginal product has actually peaked at 6. But just watch what happens as they keep hiring. The data reveals a really fascinating and ultimately kind of dangerous narrative. Initially, we see this rapid growth in total output. There's increasing marginal productivity right up to that 4th worker.
I mean, they're synergizing, they're passing tools, they are working as a highly efficient machine. But then, because the equipment is fixed, the output growth slows down significantly. By the time we get to the 7th and 8th worker, total output just completely flatlines at 32 units. And get this, by the 9th worker, total output actually declines down to 30.
This case study hits the nail on the head for a foundational concept we call the law of diminishing marginal productivity. Basically, it states that as more variable inputs, like our workers, are added to existing fixed inputs, like our Japanese factory's equipment, at some point, marginal productivity will inevitably decrease. It's a mathematical certainty, and it proves a vital reality for literally any business owner. You cannot simply hire your way to infinite growth if your underlying infrastructure is limited.
You can actually see how this mathematical reality hits 3 distinct, undeniable phases right here. First, we've got the honeymoon phase of increasing productivity, peaking at 6 extra units with our 4th worker. Awesome. Second, we hit diminishing productivity, where the 7th worker is only adding 1 single unit of output. Like, they're helpful, but barely. And finally, we crash into a destructive negative productivity phase, where that 9th worker actually has a marginal product of -2.
The key academic takeaway here is absolutely crucial for any manager or entrepreneur. Beyond a certain point, the marginal product goes negative, which means your newest hires are literally getting in the way. It's the classic too many cooks in the kitchen scenario. They're waiting in line to use the machines, they're distracting each other, creating huge bottlenecks. Hiring too fast without expanding your fixed capital actively destroys your total output. You are literally paying people to reduce your production. No way around it.
And this brings us right back to why understanding the difference between accounting and economic profit is just so vital, especially when you hit this phase of diminishing absolute productivity. This phase is a massive, gaping drain on your economic profit. Think about it. The firm is paying explicit costs, real hard cash out of pocket for that 9th worker's wages, and in return, they're yielding negative output. Your costs are skyrocketing and your revenue potential is actually shrinking. This is exactly how companies that look incredibly busy and fully staffed end up bleeding cash.
Ultimately, grasping these microeconomic principles is the difference between falling for a nice-looking accounting illusion and ensuring real, long-term business survival. The true cost of doing business always includes what you give up, and the absolute limit of your growth is dictated by your fixed constraints. So, I want to leave you with this thought as we wrap up this explainer. As you look at your own projects, your teams, or your businesses, are your next hires actually increasing your output, or are they just driving up your explicit costs while getting in the way?